Hey guys, Scott Patton here. It's October, it's fall, and I'm sure you've seen all kinds of videos about, all kinds of ways to catch fish in the fall, targeting certain techniques and stuff like that. But probably one of the best techniques a guy can keep in mind when he's going out in October, fishing in the fall, is to what I call junk fishing. And what I mean by junk fishing is, the fish are so spread out that you can literally catch them doing a lot of different things throughout different times of the day. And, if you guys haven't done that, then this video here should be able to help you out as far as covering more water and finding more of these isolated fish or just small groups of fish. Because, in October, the water temperature is usually up and down, up and down. And so it puts the bait in different places, different days, and it puts the fish in different places, different days. And again, like I said, it will spread them out. So here's a few lures that I use, and what I'm doing is I'm actually going. Normally, I'll start out doing this in the creeks. I will probably start out in the bigger creeks and run it. You can kind of scan around with your depth finders and stuff and try to see where the bait is. But if I will start normally about halfway back most of the time, okay? Because usually the last half of the creeks in October is where you're going to find most of your fish. So I'm going to start out in the morning. I'm going to always start out throwing a topwater bait. And when I say topwater bait, guys, I'm not saying this is the only one I throw. I may have a buzz bait tied on too. This is the Lucky Craft 117. It's like a pencil popper. It's a real good bait. You want a bait that you can cover water with, that you can keep moving with, and trying to find those isolated fish. I could take this thing and throw it over stumps on the end of laydowns and stuff like that, on shallow flats and stuff, and it's going to draw those aggressive bites early in the morning. So I usually like to start out with topwater probably in the first hour of the day. All right, another bait that is going to be good to help you find fish is going to be, of course, a jackhammer. And a lot of times this time of year, guys, most of these baits are going to be shad patterns, and this is a half-ounce jackhammer with a gold blade. It's probably one of my favorites. Just the natural shad color. I actually got a fluke tied on that. I think that is. I like these. It's got a real tight wiggle to them. A lot of times I'll take and dip that tail in chartreuse. Again, this is another good bait that will cover water for you. You can keep moving, looking for those isolated objects, isolated targets that you can find fish on. And with the jackhammer, the chatterbait type bait, you always got to remember a spinnerbait with it too. You may throw to a treetop, you guys, with the chatterbait, and they may not hit it. You may throw the topwater on it, and may not get a bite. You might throw a chatterbait, but then you may pick up something like the spinnerbait and throw it in there and get those fish to react. So when you're junk fishing like this, you want to keep an open mind and give them very different options of those fish when you find these targets to try to catch a fish out of them. A lot of times you catch a big fish out of some of these isolated targets too. So I'll throw a spinnerbait. Usually if it's windy, I'll probably slow roll it. If it's more of a calm day, then I will just reel this thing up and let it come, reel it past up to the cover. You always want to cast your baits, guys, past your targets. So many times when I got guys out and I'm doing a guide trip and I see a lay down or a stump, I tell them there's 2 or 3 stumps right there, and you can see the shadows in them. Of the stumps, and I tell them cast to them, they'll cast right on top of the stumps. That is not what you want to do. You're going to spook the fish if he's there. What you're trying to do is most of the time get a reaction strike when you're fishing like this. So you want to try to get 4, 5, or 6 feet at least beyond your target if you can, depending on if it's on a bluff wall or something's in the way. But try to position your boat where you can get 5 or 6 feet past that target and cast beyond it, reel the bait up to it. In a spinnerbait, what I'm going to do a lot of times in the fall is I'll reel that spinnerbait pretty fast. I'll reel it pretty fast up to the stump. Once it gets to the stump, I'll just kill it and let it just fall. Catch so many fish like that, and that's just a reaction strike. He's sitting there, You know, he knows his environment. He knows he can sense when something's coming around him. So if that spinnerbait's coming and it looks natural to him, and then you all of a sudden reel it to the stump and just kill it and let it fall, that fish is going to react out of it and catch them. Now you can do this. Spinnerbait's fantastic for this, but you can do this also with the jackhammer and even a topwater bait, guys. You know, walk it real fast up to the stump and just kill it. You know, and see, you know, a lot of times you're going to get that reflex strike out of that fish on any of these baits. Another fantastic bait to have tied on in the fall for junk fishing is going to be a small crankbait, a small square bill. You know, you almost want to have one of these tied on because, you know, you got a shad pattern, but chartreuse can be a real good color in the fall. It's just something about it that they like. So, you know, experiment. I wouldn't just have one square bill tied on. This is another good search bait. You can throw it on riprap. You can throw it, you know, on chunk rock banks. You can throw it on stumps. But another good bait to junk fish with in the fall as you're covering water. And just keep moving, you guys. Don't spend a lot of time. You're fishing for a bite here and a bite there because these fish are isolated, okay? So that's what you want. You always want to have that square bill tied on too. And you know, of course, you know, the frog can be good. And I know everybody thinks that a lot of times a frog is only for grass fishing. A frog is not for grass fishing. I'll tell you, I catch some of my biggest fish here on Chickamauga fishing a frog in the post-spawn times when they are actually around wood or something like that. I've caught some giants with this thing. But, you know, again, we're talking about fall. But what I'm getting at is this bait can be fished around treetops. The good thing about this bait versus like the gunfish, the topwater bait, is I can get this thing tight in cover around docks. I can get it up into, you know, lay down trees and stuff. You don't have to worry about, you know, skipping that thing up underneath this cover, and you can draw out some big strikes with this. You know, you're going to be able to put this bait where a lot of guys ain't even casting, and a lot of times in today's fishing, you've got to be able to do that because you know, our lakes, you know, all of them pretty much get hammered anymore. There's a lot of fishermen out there, and they ain't creating new lakes, so you got to be able to create new ways to catch fish in those areas. But, you know, when I'm junk fishing, I'm going to always have a frog tied on. It don't necessarily have to be a white one. It could be a black one. It could be a brown. You know, the brown one that represents like a bluegill can be real good too. But that's a bait I usually keep. I may not be throwing this as much as the others, but when you get to a good lay down or something like that, and you got branches you can skip that thing up into or underneath the dock or something, and they're hitting top water, then this bait here is going to shine where you can't, you know, throw that gunfish or something, okay? So a frog's important to have tied on when you're junk fishing. And probably one of my favorites, you know, I probably like to, myself, if I had to pick one of these out, I'd probably pick a spinnerbait and then flipping, okay? I'm gonna always have my flipping stick rigged up anytime I'm junk fishing in the fall. And I usually go with a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce pro tungsten. You know, I got it pegged with a bobber stopper, and I've got a pretty good size hook on here. You're gonna have to play around with different baits, but usually a lot of times crawfish baits can be real good. But then shad patterns too, you guys. Sometimes I'll flip a white bait, you know, because it represents a shad a lot of times when you're throwing it in the treetops around a dock posts and stuff like that. You can skip it underneath the docks. But it's very important to have that tied on. I, you know, always have it pretty much tied on with 25-pound test Seagar. And because if I get a big fish on around a dock post or in a lay down or even some stumps, I want to be able to force that fish out of there and land him and get him to the boat. But that's pretty much, you know, like I said, this is just a quick tip, you guys, for junk fishing. If you're having trouble on your lakes catching fish right now, don't fish too slow. I mean, you know, we talk about this a lot of times when I'm out with guys. You know, you've got to cover water. When that bite's tough, you cover water, you know, and pick out those isolated targets, and you're going to be able to put some more fish in the boat on them tough days. So hopefully this will help you guys out in your fishing this fall. You guys be sure to subscribe. I appreciate it. Follow along, and we'll see you on the water. Thanks.